Hey, I hope you're having a good day. Hope you had a good day at school today. And we're going to start out with a reading. And this reading is called Power Play. So I want you to pause the video right now and I want you to read the instructions on page 8 and then the article on page 9. And then we will read the article together when you have finished. Okay, Power Play. Games have been played since the dawn of civilization. As society progressed, so did the complexity of games. An important initial discovery. In 1923, when a British archaeologist, Sir Leonard Woolley, excavated an archaeological site at Ur in Mesopotamia, he discovered 5 sets of a board game which had first been played around 5,000 years ago. Known as the Royal Game of Ur, this game is usually quoted as the earliest known board game. It was played in a similar way to modern board games such as Ludo or backgammon, with pieces being moved around along and off the board according to the throw of pyramid-shaped dice. Now, I'm going to read the next paragraph and then we'll see which is the fitting title for this article. Amazingly, more recent archaeological discoveries in Palestine and Jordan may make the Royal Game of Ur a relative newcomer. Game boards have been found that can be dated back to Neolithic times, some 4,000 years before the Royal Game of Ur. Indeed, it seems that certain civilizations actually developed board games before they could create pottery or even write. So, looking at these different matching headings, I would say that it's E, earlier examples uncovered, because we see here that game boards have been found that can be dated back to Neolithic times, some 4,000 years before. So that's the word, the key words that show you that this is earlier examples uncovered. Okay, we'll continue on paragraph 2. Evidence from more recent times shows the development of games which demanded skill, logic, and reason, not simply the lucky throw of dice. The ancient Greeks had a game called Petia, which is mentioned in ancient texts. The game spread eastwards with an expansion of the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great from about 330 before Christ. It was the merging of this Greek game of reason with the ancient Indian game of chance called Chaturanga that led to the development of the game we now call chess. Okay, in this one, the correct heading would be a combination of ideas, because the Greek game called, the Greek game called Petia and the Indian game called Chaturanga are combined to form the new game called chess. So it's a combination of ideas to form a new game or a more modern game. Okay, paragraph 3. Modern major games like chess have all developed in a similar way. First of all, an originator comes up with a new creative idea for a game which tests mental skills. This is then introduced to a wider range of players who form clubs. Champions then emerge who become the recognized leaders, experts, and theorists of the game. This leads to the formal competitions, literature, and established game rules. The final stage is that of national and international competitions arise and a world champion is crowned. So here the fitting title would be A Typical Pattern of Events, because it talks about how all the games have developed in a similar way. So a typical pattern of events, that's letter H. Okay, paragraph 4. A natural limitation to the growth of mind games in the past has been the fact that in most instances the number of players is 2, occasionally 3 or 4, and rarely more. Unlike a physical sporting event, the small size of the board usually limits the number of spectators to a handful. Contrast this with the number of people in the modern sports stadium, and we can easily see why physical sports have been more popular than mental games as spectator events. Okay, so letter C says comparison with rival attractions. The rival attractions being the sporting events that include more people. And the key word to connect is contrast this with the number of people. That word contrast parallels the letter C comparison. So that gives you your clue right there. Okay, let's continue with paragraph 5. Despite these limiting barriers to the spread of mind sports as spectator events, the expansion in recent years has been staggering. A measure of the rising popularity of mind sports is reflected in the increased prize money offered to the winners of contests. And that's not all. The number of local, national, and international competitions is increasing, while virtually all important newspapers and magazines run articles, columns, and feature sections on chess, bridge, and other brain twisters. Okay, so letter G says reasons to think that interest is growing. And the key phrases in this article are the rising popularity of mind sports is reflected in the increased prize money. So is reflected is giving a reason. Also, and that's not all, the number of local, national, and international competitions is increasing. So for those key phrases, we know that G, reasons to think that interest is growing, is the best choice. Okay, paragraph 6. In recent years, the annual Mind Sports Olympiad, an event held in London, has begun to attract a huge following. 8,000 people who share an enthusiasm for such activities come together to take part in games such as Scrabble, Go, chess, bridge, backgammon, and the ancient African game Oware, probably the oldest board game still being actively played. Okay, so letter F says a gathering of like-minded people. And if you look at the middle of this paragraph, it says 8,000 people who share an enthusiasm. In other words, they share the same type of interest. They are like-minded people. So the paragraph heading there would be F. And then our last paragraph, 7. Competition on the mental battlefield can also be seen instantaneously via the internet. In 1997, when Garry Kasparov, the famous Russian chess champion, played IBM's Deep Blue computer, the final hour of the final game attracted 22 million spectators around the world. Games have become far more than just a game. The future looks to be more challenging than ever. Okay, letter A says instant access to worldwide audience. And so obviously the phrase instantaneously via the internet is the clue to show that that's the proper heading. Okay, so always when you're doing these readings, look for keywords that correspond with the heading. They're not going to use the same words, but they're going to be words that are synonyms, words that mean the same thing. Okay, now I want you to turn to page 7, and we're going to complete the sentences below with the correct word or phrase. We're to use each word or phrase only once. And what I'm going to do is read the sentence and leave a slight pause for you to try to guess what the correct blank is before I fill in the gap. Okay? The first one's already done for us, so the second one's easy. Although my brother likes violent computer games, he is not an aggressive person. Number 2, Mom only lets him play for 1 hour each day in spite of all his protests. Okay, number 3, my friends hate the theater. However, I think it's great. While I can't afford to go to the theater very often, I often watch plays on the TV. Number 5, we're going to see the new musical. Are you coming too? We're going to a museum tomorrow, and we're also hoping to visit an art gallery if we have time. 7, the film had great reviews, so I decided to see it. I couldn't follow the plot very well as I'd missed the beginning of the film. Number 9, neither of my parents knows much about modern art. And then 10, I don't think either of them ever studied art at school. Since number 9 is talking about something that the parents don't know about, you would use neither. It's the negative form of these two choices. And then in number 10, the word I don't, in English we can't have a double negative, so you couldn't say I don't think neither. You have to have I don't think either of them ever studied art at school. Okay, number 11, the actors gave a great performance. Nevertheless, the play did not get very good reviews. And then 12, despite all their efforts, the actors could not stop the producer from closing the theater. Okay, so now we've got the lexical clause. We're to read the text and decide whether A, B, C, or D best fits each space. So in these, it's helpful to look at your choices first before reading the sentence. So I'll pause between each sentence that has a gap so that you can look at your choices and be thinking about the correct one before I give it to you, okay? Some people think that movies can make people violent. Number 1. However, I don't agree. I just don't believe that nice people become villains after watching a film. Have any of your friends changed their personality after watching a James Bond movie? I'm sure they haven't. In the early days of cinema, critics said that movies were immoral and that they would destroy society. Teachers used to discourage their students from watching gangster films. They said students would all become gangsters unless they stopped watching such violent films immediately. Things haven't altered a great deal since then. People still believe that movies make people violent. Some months ago, our newspapers were full of stories about a violent criminal. This criminal committed a terrible crime. Some reporters said the man had become violent as a result of watching a video called Rambo. But it was later revealed that the man didn't own a video player and had probably never even seen Rambo. I agree we need rules about what can be shown in the cinema, but I hope the day never comes when we can no longer watch films, gangster movies, and action films like James Bond in our cinemas. Okay, hope you did well on that one. Now we're going to go to page 10 and look at this grammar. I'm sorry, not page 10. We're going to stop for now, and that's going to be our first lesson. Now, I hope that this is helpful, and if you think you need to review the stories again and look up any words that you don't understand, that would be very helpful. At any point, you can stop the video and then continue to do the work. And so I recommend that. I recommend that you read all of the articles before we fill them in. Read all of the readings before we fill them in. Okay, I'm going to stop for now, and we'll get back later. Okay, well, I'm going to add one more section to our first lesson, and it's transformations. So on page 10, part 4, we're going to go ahead and do that. I would suggest that you turn off the video and try to do this yourself, and then turn it back on and go through it with me, okay? Number 1, the actress began working in television in 1999. The actress has been working in television since 1999. Number 2, how long have you been training to be a dancer? When did you start training to be a dancer? Number 3, the play only started a couple of minutes ago, so we haven't missed much. The play just started, so we haven't missed much. Number 4, the ballet company are just finishing a 6-month tour. Number 4, the ballet company has been touring for 6 months. Number 5, the actors started rehearsing 2 months ago. The actors have been rehearsing for 2 months. Number 6, it's almost a year since I last went to the cinema. Now this one I had to think about for quite a while before I came up with use of the word for, and this is what I came up with. I've not bought a ticket for the cinema for almost a year. 7, I have never seen such a terrible film before. This is the worst film I've ever seen. 8, Tom has never acted in public before. This is the first time Tom has acted in public. And then 9, the theater was last used a year ago. The theater hasn't been used for a year. And then 10, the theater first became important in ancient times. The theater has been important since ancient times. Okay, and with this, we're finished with lesson 1.